Earthbound is an outstanding game. It really is. It was always something I wanted to play, but never got to because, I was just a little jit who was stupid and didn't even know that emulation existed. But now I do. Growing up, it always interested me that a game was so free that enemies in an RPG were cars and rats, and the towns that make up the map were named in numerical order. It's so weird, but so creative, and now that I finally got to play it, it became my second favorite thing ever, behind Breath of the Wild, of course. That's for a whole different video. Wacky, creative, colorful, and somehow holds a beautiful narrative underneath. Well, where do I come in? I'm learning Blender. I need something to model. I decided to challenge myself with recreating certain Earthbound enemies in 3D with Blender. Some parts were shit, but the others, I think they can pass. If you ever played Earthbound, you would know the most jarring section of the game was the Lost Underworld, which shrunk your character models to like 6 pixels and got chased by spheres with faces. It was really weird. A common enemy type were dinosaurs, and in specific the Wetnosaur, a giant green T-Rex-like creature but with a derpy face drawn on. The body and the head were 2 separate parts of the model. On the head here, I did a custom cut to make that weird snout thing popping out from the top that's like dark green. I made certain ridges up through its body to replicate the scales on its stomach. I think they're scales. And I also did the same by extruding certain parts on its tail to give it more depth. And finally, I painted it green as the final touch. There was one more issue with these models. They were going to be floating in an endless black void when they were rendered. Who wants that? That's boring, and I don't want that. Something I really loved about Earthbound was its colorful scenery and art in general. It's definitely up there with some of the greats. I think another way to breathe life into these enemies is by giving them their respective backgrounds in the games. So that's what I did. The next enemy I wanted to recreate was Frankeystein. Frankeystein is the first boss of the game alongside his creator, Franky. When I first saw Frankeystein, I was appalled. He was just made of raw wood and metal thrown together like a school project. He stood out against all of the whimsical nature of Onet. He was menacing, but silly at the same time. Making the suit was the hardest part of this modeling process because the stripes weren't lining up the way I wanted them to, but after spending some 30 minutes in the shader tab, I was able to get them right. Then I was able to move on to the hair, which was a little awkward at first, getting the waves and everything, especially that his proportions as a character are very stylized. But I was able to get it to work, smoothed it out with subsurface division, and here we are. Summers, also known as the Eternal Tourist Trap, is Earthbound's take on a sunny paradise that has been modernized. Here, we find beaches, buildings set next to the sea, and people who walk around only with their swimwear. When I made it to Summers, I immediately got jumped by a bunch of inanimate objects. One of them being the mad taxi, which I thought was going to be the easiest. I was very wrong, as it shredded my HP incredibly quickly. Who wouldn't underestimate a car with 2 eyes? That's it. And then it just pummeled me. I really enjoyed designing the car body for it due to its cartoony curves. It was just really fun, really weird, really different, as a lot of these are. Then I got to making the smaller, finer details, such as the wheels and the little ram thing at the top. After that, we got to the shaders, which I made a tuned to RGB shader to make it a contrast of orange to yellow. The final part was making Summers itself, designing the beach chairs and umbrellas, and designing that fine white sand.